Okay, these are the 3 big boxes I got. As you can see, we've got a little bit of road damage on each of them from shipping. We're hoping that everything inside is still the way that it needs to be. So let's take a peek. And of course I opened the bottom. This is the control box with the 4th axis, and it looks like other accessories. For reference, this is not what they showed in the advertisement or the ad that they had on Amazon, but it's close. And the ports on the back are 110 volt with USB. We have a knife output. That might be for a hot knife. We have spindle power. We have A, B, A, Z, Y, and X. And we also have a Z limit switch input or output. Those are listed as do-it-yourself ports, but they look pretty straightforward. We'll take a look at the next box. Now this box has an obvious bulge kind of right in the middle of it, which I'm a little worried about. That might actually be my spindle. Open it up and see what we can see. That is my spindle. I do want to point out this thing is labeled as CNC Est, not the company that actually sold it, not the company that actually said that it was theirs. Spindle seems smooth. I would have no hesitation to fire that up. So it looks like we have another parts pack down below, down here. At this point, this looks very good. Not concerned about pulling this out and hooking this up. Just for reference, they did actually enclose the motors in plywood to aid in shipping so that they would not be banged. That actually is really nice. I'm not so sure that this one has been. This top one has been. Oh, it has been as well. Yeah, after I put the foam off. So this appears to be very nice, very nicely made, very nicely packaged, I should say. That's a better way to put it. So we will move on to box number 3. This is the 3rd and final box. This one makes a little noise when you move it around. There's some loose parts inside. That might just be the aluminum extrusions that you use for the bed. It may be other things. Hoping nothing's damaged. I'd really like to get this thing up and running by the weekend so I can throw a couple jobs at it. Not that the Probotix CNC machine that I have now isn't great. It's a fantastic product, but it is quite a bit smaller, and this is going to expand my capabilities quite a bit in my home shop and allow me to work on material that is almost store standard size, which would be 2 foot by 4 foot. Okay, as we can see, I think the majority of the sound was possibly this piece of metal. It's used for the cable management that screws to the side. As you can see, the uprights are. It actually looks like that one is bent. Looks like that is bent pretty severely. This one right here, if we look at it, it does appear to be pretty bent. We'll see if we can get around that. We'll pull the bed off, take a look at that that axis, and we'll see if we can figure out if there's a way to fix that without having to send it back. Once again, things to note, looks like the stepper motors are protected. It did come through the end of the box, but the stepper motor is inside, so I think we'll probably be okay there. But we'll have more information on this as we dig in a little deeper. The gantry. I want to talk about this. This thing weighs 95 pounds. It is stout. The bed weighs 125 pounds. You put that all together, you got 220 pounds worth of machinery, steel. This is not aluminum construction. This is steel construction. It's painted in this. I don't know why they chose tan. Probably because it's the cheapest paint they could find, or a mix of everything they had in the factory. Who knows? But I want to talk about this real quick. I want to talk about this. CNC Router. That's who makes this machine. That is not who I bought this from. I bought this from a vendor who said it was somebody else's machine, but this is who I got. I also noticed that when I purchased this machine on Amazon, there was 4 or 5 different vendors of the same machine, all at different prices, that all of their inventory got decremented one when I bought mine, which makes me go, this is all the same company selling all under different names, just trying to find out what the right price point is to sell as much as they can. And that's fine. I understand. You're a sales organization. That's what you want to do. Go for it. I paid the lowest price I could. I paid $2,408, I think it was, with $20 in shipping. The same unit was at another vendor for $25.99 with free shipping. So it kind of makes me wonder if there was a difference. I doubt there was. This also came with a 4th axis, some different collets and things like that. This is the 2200 watt or 2.2 kilowatt spindle. I think we need to be realistic about that number. At 2.2 kilowatts on a 110 volt circuit, that's going to draw about 20 amps, and we all know that this machine doesn't really draw 20 amps. So I'm guessing that it's probably not a true 2.2 kilowatt spindle, or might peak at 2.2 kilowatts under particular circumstances, but for the most part it probably is not. But that's okay. I was looking at the 1.5 kilowatt version because that would handle everything I needed. That came with an ER11 collet, which is a 1/4 inch collet, and some various metric sizes right around the 1/4 inch mark. This one actually says it came with an ER11 collet too, but I did get curious and pulled my collet off to find that it is indeed an ER20 collet. I don't know if you can see that, but it is an ER20 collet, which means I can use bits all the way up to 1/2 inch in this thing. And that is exactly what I was looking for. I gambled on that part. One of the things I will tell you is there are not very many reviews on these machines, and there's not a whole lot of information available. If you want to buy one, usually the manufacturer says contact us after you buy it and we'll tell you everything you want to know, which is not the best sales tactic, but I understand they don't want to waste a lot of time answering questions for people that aren't really interested in the machine. So let's talk about the gantry just a little bit more. It does come with a cable management system, and all the cables are pre-run. We have X, Y, and Z all running through here, as well as limit switches, which I guess do hook up. We have our water coolant line that runs through here, and it all looks to be in pretty good shape. I did notice that they put Teflon tape on some of the nuts. I don't know why. I guess that's their locking type system. I don't know. It seems kind of odd to put that on a metal-to-metal connection, but if that's what they do, cool. But that is the spindle and gantry in a nutshell. We'll take a little bit closer look at this in another few minutes. Thanks. Okay, so I'm sorting out the parts bag here. Things to note is there is no paper manual that comes with this thing at all. There's nothing, which I'm really a little surprised about because it said it came with the manual. But then again, you kind of get what you pay for, and I've been around these things a lot. So, trying to figure out where some of these screws go. We've got different sizes. We've got, these are all basically Allen head screws or bolts that go in. There's 6 of those, 8 of those, and if we take a look at our gantry a little bit, we'll see that there are 4 screws on each, 4 holes on each side. So I'm guessing 8 for 8. And then we've got 6 of these, and there are 3 holes on the bottom that screw up from the bottom of the axes to screw into this. There's 3 holes there on each side, that's 6, and there are 6 of this length, so I'm doing some simple deduction here, guessing that that is how this all goes together. We also have some of these little guys, as well as small Phillips head screws and some nuts. They do give you a lot of these bolts for the hold downs that you get with them. You get 12 of these, which seems a little like overkill, but it's great because you have 12 to work with. Keeping in mind though, at the same time, you probably not going to use all these at once, or if you're holding something down, you can hold it down really, really good with 12. I'm actually going to be setting mine up. It's going to have a spoiler board on it. It's going to have some threaded inserts from the bottom. So that's how I'm going to be setting mine up. That will be in a later video that I show, but I just wanted to mention that. So anyways, that's the screw situation. I'm going to try to do a time-lapse video of the assembly of the gantry to the base, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so at this point we have got the one side of the gantry attached. It is attached by 4 Allen head bolts going into an L bracket on the side, as well as 3 Allen head bolts that go directly up into this this upright. We've attached our cable chain tray, and we've also attached our cable train to both the gantry and to the other end of the cable chain tray. So now we should be able to move back and forth. I've noticed that it's not perfectly in line. I really don't think it matters. It's just dragging it back and forth. If it comes down to be a point, I'll put 2 more holes down there and move the entire cable chain assembly over just a little bit. But at this point, it's totally fine. Or I could also build a step-out bracket for this right here to bring the cable chain out a little bit. As you noticed, all the wires are still disconnected. I've got to spin this rig 180 degrees to attach the other side of the gantry to the platform, to the bed. It's getting pretty heavy. I might call in help. I'm not sure. But at this point, it's starting to look like more and more like a CNC router. My shop is feeling very full. But before I can spin it around, I do have to make the connections on this side of the machine. So I'm actually going to make those connections. I'm actually going to zoom in so you guys can see the connections I'm making. And I want you to be aware that the connections only go one way. Things like that. So in just a second, I'll do that. For the Z-axis, we have this cable that is pre-wrapped attached to the Z-stepper motor, which is behind this wire right here. It is actually not attached to anything, but we also have this particular pigtail hanging out of our, basically our cable wrap. So this is the cable that is going to be for the stepper motor. I want to point out it only goes one way. It is a keyed connector. I don't know if you can see that. It actually got a little notch on the top, as well as a notch and a lever on the top. So it only goes in one way, and it clicks in just like that. So that connection is made. Down here we have a very similar connection. This connection is for the, depends on how you have your machine set up. This could be the Y or the Z. I always call this the Y. I'm sorry, not the Y or the Z, the Y or the X. I always call this the Y, the X being the long travel of the bed. The travel of the bread. Yep, lots of bread in the shop here. We do a lot of bread stuff. Anyways, this clicks in the exact same way as the other one. Maybe able to see a little bit better here. It has a small tooth on that. It has a small lever on here, and this clicks in just as the same as the other axis, just like that. It's connected. Down here we have some connections as well. We have this one. If you notice, this is a very similar color scheme to the wire that's coming out of the cable chain for the stepper motor that's on the Y-axis. It is a brown, blue, green, yellow. This is actually for this long pigtail. This is for your A. This is your A axis. It is not labeled in any way, shape, or form. I will probably end up labeling that in time. We also have this small pigtail. This sneaks out from the bottom of the machine. It's actually tucked up in there. And until you kind of reach up and find it, you're not going to find it. But this is for the limit switches. This is for all the limit switches. There are 6 limit switches on the machine. There's 2 on each the Z, X, and Y axes. And this is what connects those all to this particular cable chain, which of course will feed back into the control box. This is the same connector as they used on the other ones, so it's just a quick click, just like that, and it's connected. Okay, so I'm back in the shop again. It's been a couple days. I haven't had a lot of time to work on this, but what I did do, and I did do this off camera, sorry everybody, is I just finished a couple remedial steps. I had to spin the unit around 180 degrees to get access to this end of the Z-axis. The Z-axis being this axis. The Y-axis being this axis, and Z being this. So X, Y, and Z. But this end is the end of the X-axis for the gantry that had a bent bracket. I was able to bend the bracket back with a couple of C-clamps, and then I did fasten it with the 4 Allen head bolts that were available and the 3 Allen head bolts from the bottom. It is very stable, it is very tight now, and it is working properly. I would like to basically also say that the manufacturer of the unit, or the seller of the unit, has been great with communication and has offered to send me parts if I need them. So I'm at the point where I need to hook up the rest of the electronics, and I will be doing that in a moment. You'll be able to see that, and I'm going to basically run a test with it so you can see what that looks like. I'll be back in a moment. One thing I did want to point out is in a prior section of this video, I did say that this small pigtail right here was probably for the A axis, and it is not. It is actually for the Y axis, which is also right here. Once you get the side on and get it connected, it is very close. It's actually a little bit of a tight fit, but it does work properly. So I'm going to connect that up, and it's going to click together just like the others. Only connects one way, and it is good to go. So that axis is good to go, and we're going to give this thing a test in just a moment. So with this unit, you do get a small water pump. This is basically the same water pump that comes with every piece of Chinese equipment that is water cooled on the internet. I think it's pretty small, it's pretty generic. It's basically like a pond pump. They do have a pretty good lifespan. I've been running one for about a year on my laser cutter, and I've never had a problem with it. But I'm going to hook this up, and the easiest way to do it is you basically just push the hose onto the barbed end that was pre-installed as such. Make sure that that's screwed in there. The brass piece is screwed into the pump, and then it's ready to submerge. The flow on these, I do not believe is specific. I'm just going to run mine this way. The hoses are also not labeled, so if I do need to reverse this, I can reverse it later on. But at this point, I don't see the purpose in having to go one particular direction versus the other. So I'm going to get this set up, get the tank filled with some water, which is I'm using a generic blue tank that I use for everything liquid cooled, and we'll get this pump going, make sure we have water flow before we power up the rest of the system. Alright, we have water flowing. Doesn't appear that it's flowing at a very high rate of speed, but it is flowing. There's no air bubbles. And I'm going to cover this thing up and see if we can get this thing going. I will hopefully have a running CNC machine to show you on the next little clip. Okay, so before I hook the box up, what I do want to do is I want to go through a quick explanation as to what's back here. I kind of covered this in a little prior segment of this video, but I want to go through it again just so that everybody's on the same page as we connect this thing. We have got a whip that has 5 cables coming out of it. These are not labeled in any way, shape, or form. That is less than ideal. Or maybe they are. Actually, they are. If you look very, very carefully at the barrel section of the cable, it does actually have a little letter on it, being XYZ. So you do have some kind of an idea as to how these plug in. So that is fantastic. I didn't see that before. It was kind of covered up by the threads. So I'm going to plug some of these in and show you that it really is pretty darn easy. So this is our Z axes. These go in as such and screw down. This is my spindle, and this actually is the only 5-pin connector, and it's also the only 5-pin connector on the back of the unit. So that's a no-brainer right there. Here. Not a very tight connection, but I imagine it'll work just fine. Okay, then we do have this one, which is a 3-pin connection. Mine is actually a little crushed. This is not labeled in any way, but there's only one 3-pin connection on the back, and it's labeled as a Z limit, but I believe it to be the limit switches for all the axes, being X, Y, and Z. Of course, A does not have a limit switch because it does not function in that capacity. So with this, it is set up and it is ready to run. I'm gonna make sure my top is on my liquid, but it is ready to go. Next thing we need to do is to power it on and give it a little bit of a run through, which we will do in the next segment as soon as I find the cord that came with it. Okay, so I have my liquid cooling hooked up. It is running. You probably can't hear the humming in the background. And I also have the entire cabling hooked up for all the axes into the control box. My control box is sitting on top of the bed. I do not recommend this, especially if you plan on doing a lot of motion on the unit, only because you could knock the box off and cause problems. I'm not planning on doing any large motion. I'm just planning to move it around just a little bit to make sure that all the axes are functioning as they should be. I'm not going to be doing any high speed anything. So just keep that in mind. Your layout should be a little bit neater than mine. What you don't see, you see a lot of tools on the wall back here, and my garage, my shop here is, let's just say it's messy right now. There's a lot going on in here. It's the first time I filmed in here, so there's a lot of things that go on with that too. So I apologize for that. But let's get this thing hooked up the rest of the way. I'm just using a little Dell touchscreen laptop tablet that I had lying around. It's got Windows 10 on it, and that actually should work just fine for Mach 3 with the motion control DLL that they did provide. It is the RnR Motion, which is not what they said in the description it was going to have, so I'm kind of excited about that. It's actually a good little DLL that goes with a control board that I bought for my Fireball V90 too. So I'm kind of familiar with it. I did load the other files that were sent with it as well, which were XML files for the mill profiles within Mach 3. Those should be in here already, but I'm going to get this connected. We'll get it fired up, and let's cross our fingers that it doesn't go wonky as soon as I turn it on. So here it goes. What you probably just heard was that it did just realize it's setting up the RnR Motion 2.0 card. It's actually what it's saying down here at the bottom of the screen. That's a good thing. I'm going to open up the profile Mach 3 mill. And this is the generic screen set that comes with Mach 3. It's very generic. I'm going to turn on my my box here. Turn on the box. The fan started. I heard all the stepper motors go click click as they became energized. That's a good sign. I do have a flashing 000 on my inverter or my variable frequency drive. I'm going to turn this maybe so you guys can see it a little bit better. So as you can see, I'm getting a flashing 000, and I don't know exactly what that means yet. But what we're going to do is we're going to see if we have some basic motion. My emergency stop is released. It says device is ready is flashing. We have motion on the X and the Y. Let's see if we got any on the Z axis. And we do. This is a good test. The VFD is not currently on There was a video on how to set this up, but the instruction manual said it didn't have to. So I'm actually kind of wondering what will happen if I tell the spindle to increase its speed. Let's try it. Well, at this point nothing happens, so I need to figure that out. I'm going to try to figure that out and I'll be right back. Okay, so in the last video, the things that we went through were basically running all three axes through their paces. And what we came to the conclusion was is they were functioning properly. I did have to go and make a couple changes to the VFD to get it to work with the software. I think it was one of the troubleshooting settings that was set incorrectly, so I switched it from a 1 to a 0, and now it works properly. And you can see that because I have my spindle speed on Mach 3 set to 20,000, and if I turn my spindle on, helps if you don't hit it twice in a row real fast. Getting some minor bearing noises. Minor bearing noises. I'm really kind of hoping that it is a very temporary thing. And that was a new one. A little bit of a whine there at the end. I'm hoping that those do not affect the longevity of the spindle. I will be recording that and sending it to the manufacturer to see if they've got any suggestions. But my water cooling is going on, my spindle is spinning, my axes are all moving. So I am in a position now where I could take a file from VCarve or Aspire or Fusion 360. I could set my parameters, I could set my tool paths, my bits, my speeds, my feeds, and I would be able to start cutting. Keeping in mind that this is quite a mess right now. This is set up to be a test, and a test, I believe it is passed, except for a little bit of noise in my spindle. So at this point, we're good. I am going to put a link to a document that one other YouTuber found on the VFD settings from a different piece of equipment, but it's the same VFD, I believe. A lot of people have said it's the same one that they use on the 6040s and the 6090s. So I'm going to include that in the comments below, and I hope that it is able to help one of you out. I'm also going to put a couple notes on the things that I did differently possibly than what the manufacturer said. One thing that they do talk about in the manual for this piece of hardware is the installation of Mach 3. Mach 3 is made by a company called Newfangled Solutions. They make Mach 3 and they've now made Mach 4. It's a piece of software that's been around for quite a while. We're currently on version 3.x, I believe, of Mach 3. I'm not even really sure. You get a copy of that software with this piece of equipment. I am going to say that it is loosely usable. If you like the software, it's not expensive. Just buy it from Newfangled Solutions, get yourself a license, and you'll never have any problems with it. You get support, and there's a great community that surrounds it. So spend a couple $100 and get yourself the license. As far as the software that's going to feed Mach 3, that would be VCarve or Aspire or any of those pieces of software. That too. Those guys work really hard to make that software. They spend a lot of time, they spend a lot of money in development in making that software. So if you like the software, please spend the money and get yourself a license. Now you can also use Fusion 360, and you can get that for free for 1 year. And I do suggest that if you're into something like that, that you do it. but at this point I use VCarve Pro, an older version, and I use Mach 3, an older version, to do most of my stuff. But on that, I am going to sign off on this, and I'm going to take some pictures and a couple more videos that are going to go ahead and be at the trailer end of this video, so you can see how some of these things are put together. But other than that, this system is ready to go.